for Wednesday, December 11th, 2019. We are going to go off agenda. Mr. Woolley would like to say a few words. Mr. Woolley, the floor is
Thank you
yours.
very much. Now, a good friend of
Move over just a tad bit. There you are.
a good friend of the borough and the county passed away a week ago. His name was Bob Smith. He was 93 years old, but he was also the father of much of the new Beaver. If you go through town, you'll see his clock tower there. That came off this building when it burned down. He and his dad saw that at 10 years old, and he, many, many decades later, built a scale model of that. Hopefully it'll come to the county. But his clock tower came from this place. You look down at the train tracks, the museum down there is his. He filled up a lot of it. He has done an awful lot with the town, for the town. And when he passed away at 93, he was still able to remember a lot of what he'd done. He moved here at age 10 and passed away at age 93. So he saw an awful lot of the town develop. And I just wanted to be sure I shared my feeling and sorrow about him leaving us. So that's Mr. Bob Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woolley.
I want to tell you, I appreciate the fact that you spent an afternoon introducing me to him, and I will treasure that. He's an exceptional man, and I felt connected to him immediately because he worked at Michael Baker, and it just seems like, you know, when you find somebody that has worked in the same place as you have, and his drawings that he had on his wall were incredible. The originals of the concept of where the Starbucks is now, where the old 5 and 10 used to be. He's an amazing, amazing man, and he will be missed in Beaver County.
Well, one of his best friends is
Yes,
his dad.
I remember I was at a ceremony where the two of them were both acknowledged, and he couldn't make it that night, or was it your dad that could? Your dad was there.
I got
They
pictures
were
of both
there?
of them, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
I got a picture of that too.
yeah.
We were laughing, we said, as Dr. Shaughnessy would say, now the RSers can get back to work. Said my dad was just waiting for him. Where you been, Smith? We have things to do.
Yeah, they talked about
I like
collecting
that. Good.
steel and taking it to the scrap yard and collecting
yeah.
it, yeah.
He did
Remember-
that. He did that when World War II was trying to collect metal.
Right, yeah. That was a thing. They would climb the school fence and do that after school just for some extra money, yeah. An amazing man, both of them, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Woolley. We'll move to review of work session discussion meeting minutes.
I didn't have any changes to them.
Department head report. Hearing none. Solicitor's report.
Working through the resolution list, we do have for tomorrow, just point out some of the highlights. Number 2 on your list is the contract for Susquehanna Accounting to continue to do the financial consulting for the county in 2020. Number 3 is, this is for the solicitor work for human services that was previously done by Attorney Dan D'Antonio. Number 11, Mr. Woolley, you'll like this. This is $686,000 that will be given to Beaver County Libraries in 2020.
Oh, superb.
Number 12 is for the elections department, is for 2 new scanners. Absentee ballots will be counted here at the courthouse, and these scanners will help assist in tabulating those absentee ballots for beginning in the primary election in 2020. The law did change in that it makes it more easy to vote absentee ballot. You don't have to have the requirements of not being available to vote. So we are expecting a lot more absentee ballots to be coming in. These scanners will hopefully help offset that. And we're also going to get reimbursement from the state by purchasing these scanners this year. Number 21, that's the UPMC benefit. That's just a change from a previous resolution. That is the cost of the administration fee. It's $49, before it was listed as $53.51. So that's just a correction from a previous resolution. Number 21, that deals with the bathroom cleaning in the human services. There is a extra bathroom that wasn't initially accounted for in the bid proposal. This is just an add-on to do that extra work in the human services building, the janitorial services. 22 is final budget, and then 23 is the contract to do the county audit with Beaver. It is a 4-year contract, but there is an out clause in each of those years. Any questions on the resolution before I move on?
As with the Binkley Canavy, there is a clause in all of the contracts that we use for outside services, whether it be 2 weeks, a month, 3 months. There is a clause in there for, because a new board is coming in, if they're once going to make any changes.
That's correct. There are out clauses in these contracts that would enable the county or the contractor to get out of the contract. I also want to bring up with the reassessment issue. We've been speaking with Tyler Technologies, working through that contract. The intention is to have that contract available for approval by the board at their first January meeting. One of the requirements that Tyler Technologies needs is approximately 8 to 10 office spaces, desks, if you will, in order to do the work that they're going to do here in the county. I know some members of the county previously went to look at a building that's sort of directly across from the parking garage at 617 3rd Street. We've checked here in the courthouse, there just isn't any space available that would be able to accommodate a workspace of about 8 to 10. Also checked over in the human services, and there's really not any space over there as well too. So we don't really think that there's any space here in any of the county facilities, unfortunately, where we would be able to accommodate the number that Tyler Technologies needs.
The space in Beaver Falls we were looking at is finally.
The one space in the human services building that we've been trying to rent out for years looks like it is lined up to have a tenant in there starting in January. So that will be rented out. That's going to be through in the human services building.
I had someone through behavioral health.
Behavioral health,
with the industry.
they work with behavioral health, so it's a good collaboration with them to be able to have them in the same building. So that leads us to the property at 617 3rd Street. There is a lease proposal that we would sort of work through, but what the proposal is, it's a 2-year contract that would charge $1,500 a month.
How big is the space? Is it?
I don't know that we, is there a square footage in there?
There's not a square footage listed.
It's a house.
Is that all we require, 2 years? I mean, that's all we need.
It's 2 with the option of a third.
In this lease, there's 2 with an option of a 3. Our thoughts are we would do the 2 years and then see how the 3rd year plays out with Tyler, depending on where they're at in their process. We may need the 3rd year, we may not.
This isn't somewhere where we'll hold the appeals. This is just for Tyler's office staff.
Correct. This is sort of their home base, if you will, whenever they're out doing their work throughout the various parcels in the county. They need a place to go back to in order to be able to work from. That's what this place would be used for.
And if you recall, they wanted it centrally located, because I suggested the Beaver Falls
And
property.
if they call it, that's when Gerard. Yeah.
As with any old houses, does it have all of the electric, the plugs, the internet, all of that they would need to
We checked
do
with
business?
Kevin. He assured us that
Phone
internet wise it would be
lines,
fine.
all of it?
Yes.
Well, space on the main street is a bit of crime.
Yeah.
When does it start, the contract?
The lease would start in January. The contract with Tyler would start in January as well, too.
Okay.
Are you just advising us of this, or are you looking?
Yeah, I'm just letting you know if it's all right if we move forward with working out this lease. There is in the lease that they sent us, there's a couple of provisions that
You guys are looking.
we would want to sort of counter with or talk with the landlord about. I just wanted to let you know sort of the general terms as far as the amount, the location, If you guys are all right, we can continue to move forward with that, and then we would probably have a final lease prepared for you.
How
for
many
that January
employees
meeting.
are they expecting to have? I know, would you say 10, about 10
They said they need about 8 to 10 desks.
parking spaces? Will they use our parking garage because it's so close, or?
There's
So there is a parking spot, parking lot behind those few buildings on the end of that block. That is available for use. I was under the understanding we would get some type of an allotment of parking
Okay.
spaces, but the lease doesn't provide for that. It just says that there's a lot back there for that use, but there is a full-blown parking garage right across the street too, so.
But the lease itself addresses that there is a parking.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
Yeah, it says that we have use of the parking lot behind the building. And that's something we can ask in details with the landlord. Do we get a certain amount of spaces guaranteed back there, or is it a first come, first serve with the other tenants in that building? So we will continue to work forward with that lease, and then, like I said, likely have it on to you guys for approval in January.
If you can put on your negotiating hat and try and get the price down, that would be awesome for the taxpayers.
Try that.
Try that.
We'll also need an executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Any questions for the solicitor? Move to budget report. Corey.
All right, so what you have in front of you is the final budget for your approval. There were really no changes to the general fund other than just reclassifying. We added $30,000 of additional subsidies, and that came out of one of the other expenditure line items. So the total expenditure budget and revenue budget for the general fund is $81,174,508. If we add all the other restricted funds to that, the total budget is going to be $212,337,782, which is a slight reduction to the initial proposed, and that's really just because there was a change in victim's witness, which is a restricted funding stream to reduce the expenditures as well as the revenues by approximately $35,000, which is reflected in there. Other than that, there were no changes to the proposed budget.
Did you get many calls or questions from any department heads or elected officials about the proposed budget? Or did
Not
they
many,
make-
a handful of them, but most of them were more concerned about, some of the overtime and that kind of stuff that we have the general contingency set aside for
So they were looking at their
department budget.
Yeah.
But yeah, there weren't many.
Can we ask questions of him now while we're on the subject?
Yeah, can we wait and see if the board has any first?
Oh, I thought you did.
That's good. I like that.
Thanks.
You other three can do it.
Anyone?
I do. Do you have any fluctuation in the budget for the newly elected officials coming into office that from when the office is retired or left? Because those elected officials have been in those offices for a long period of time. There may be some changes. And that kind of catapults into the reassessment where it affects the assessment, the treasurers, the controllers, the commissioners, that kind of unit.
Yep.
What's the thought process there?
In the general contingency. So we set aside a fair amount of money in the general contingency for the reassessment costs that are anticipated, as well as some of those turnover costs.
Okay, good. And when you met with the department heads, I had thought that there was going to be additional people needed for assessment and additional people needed for planning. Was there anything built in for those two offices?
For the reassessment, yes, that would be included in those budgeted figures.
Okay.
For the planning, there was discussion potentially of some reorganization. Those are not in the budget. I mean, there is contingency
Okay.
that if you wanted to add that, I mean, that's a future consideration.
Okay. And is there also any funding in there for the comprehensive plan that needs to be completed by 2020?
Yes, there's the plan for that would be to fund that through some of the Act 13 money as well, because that's eligible.
Gotcha.
And that is in that.
Where is the Act 13 money at? How much? In ballpark? I just wanted a ballpark.
I'd say probably if there's a split between the legacy and the unconventional gas well, I think we're about, don't quote me on this, but about 1.5 million. And
Okay,
we're planning
that's
on
fine.
spending a good portion of that in this budget on some of those capital items. That's budgeted for in there.
Okay. Okay. And Tony, you started the conversation about the subsidies. And the suggestions that Tony made, and Dan, you agreed, they're in here
Those are
right
in there,
now,
yeah, there was an
right?
additional 30,000 that was requested to be added to that. That was one of the changes that was here, and that was taken out of, it didn't affect the total expenditure, we took it out of contingency.
Okay,
that
and
were set
I
aside.
said I wanted to do a little bit of research, and I have, and I talked with Faith Restorations, and so what I found out was that they definitely, where did I put my paper? Here it is. They are definitely in need of funding, more so cash, to do the things that they need to do. Their monthly expenses just for their building, which is rent, gas, insurance, taxes, $6,000 a month just to survive right there. Which is, I didn't realize that it was that much, and have that over your head, just to make sure that you feed the needy is shocking. I would ask if the commissioners would consider bumping from 10 to something more substantial so that they can continue their work.
So, I would consider that, but the adjustments made in the budget don't reflect Faith.
Oh, that's not in there?
No, the 30,000 is.
Oh, I thought it was.
No, the 30,000 is, the Humane
Landmarks.
Society, the Genealogical Center, and the Historical Landmark. So it's 15 additional to the Humane Society, 10 to the Genealogical, and 5 to the Historical, so it's 30. The Faith would be pulled out of the 13, which wouldn't have to adjust the budget, correct, Corey?
Yeah, and I believe that was current year when I heard it, right? You wanted
Yeah.
to pull that out of 19.
Yeah, we could
Oh,
pull that out of
19.
19's budget.
Okay.
Yeah,
To,
not
to
2020.
fund it. So I'd be okay with it as well.
So would I.
So I don't know if there's a number that you would.
She said 12?
Well, I did that last time because I knew that they needed a freezer, but they got their freezer. But when I heard that their monthly expenses are 6,000, you know, that made me change my thinking from 10. I mean, that looking at what they have to spend it's 72,000 just for their expenses. Now, I'm not saying cover 72,000, but I am saying, you know, maybe if we could meet them halfway.
Garen, is there any specific things like, you know, I know that Faith Restoration, for instance, needs a new parking lot, and it's pretty bad, but Act 13 might not cover that, because it's really not delivering of social
Yeah, it's
services.
supposed to be the delivery of the social services.
So is there anything that,
Yeah, I don't know, if we might have to have a
Okay.
conversation with them as far as what the money would be spent for particularly.
they'd have to give us a
Because if
itemized-
they go and they say, we're gonna put a new parking lot in with it, that probably doesn't fit the requirements of the Act 13.
What about rent?
I don't
To
think,
function?
I have to look into that particular issue.
Okay.
I'm sure they'd be pretty quick on getting us a list of stuff they could use. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, if we would give them money, I'm certain if they would take the other donations and put it towards the rent and the parking lot and use our stuff on the actual delivery, certainly wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, the things that they had told me, like big things, phone, safety, a baler for cardboard, parking lot, and operational. Those are their
Mhm.
high-end things that they need help with.
Would you just recommend our office reach out to them and get, is there something you could get us a list saying, you know, this is what we could use social services to deliver? I know it's a gray area.
It is. All of Act 13 is really gray. But yeah, I can work on getting you something here within the next by
I
tomorrow.
think that was done by design.
I'm certain it was.
And so they can call you to the table, which is, okay.
But that's-
I'll get something for you for tomorrow's meeting.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions from the board for the budget? Mr. Woolley, we'll take questions from the audience.
Excellent. There are two, and I just want to get some of it reinforced. The reserve that we were trying to build for potential problems was going to be 2 months, right? And that will be
That's the target. We're on pace to be right about there.
at the end of this year, and also to
Pretty
continue it.
close.
We used to have to borrow money at the beginning of the year, but we're going to have enough at the end of this year and work into it with next year's budget.
Current anticipation, as long as you have tax bills and everything get out, we should be fine on the regular schedule to not have the line of credit or the TRAN. You know, that's contingent on tax bills and those kind of things getting out on the same schedule, so we can be collected.
I know that there was a presentation put together by somebody else before you were on board that said we were not eking towards, but running towards potential problems in 2-5 years, and that is being addressed.
Yes, we're looking at that, and I mean, I think the current projection for the next couple of years looks much more positive than that report had indicated.
And reassessment, next question. That is going to be fully paid for by the county?
Yeah, the county, we're obligated to pay for that. That's not coming from any grants or anything like that.
All right, and that, the funding for that is something we can absorb over the next couple of years? Or is that gonna be a funding concern we have to address?
Well, it's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, we have set aside what we believe is the cost to be for this year.
For this year.
That we're going to.
Yeah, it's something we're gonna have to deal with. You know, the reality of the situation is that the county's gonna have to figure out a way to pay roughly $6.2 million for this reassessment over the next couple of years. And we're currently sort of working through that. Corey set some money aside for this year, and we're exploring options as far as what it's gonna take in order to pay that entire $6.2 million.
It could be a bond that we have to float with taxes, or but that's still on track and has to be done by what, the end of 3 years or 2 years?
We have to be under contract by January of this year, and then it's scheduled right now to be implemented in 2023.
6.7 mil, and that's something that you're working on now.
That's what, yeah, I mean, we're working through it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Corey for the budget? Go ahead.
I hear you're soft-spoken today. Did I hear you say no TRAN or line of credit this year?
That's the plan. I mean, as long as we're still on track to get tax bills out on time and those kind of things.
And
Yep.
why is that?
The Miracle on 3rd Street.
Ooh, I
That's
like
not
that.
bad.
Let's make that into a movie.
Yeah, it's just a function of the anticipated, what we have on available cash, so that 2 months reserve, plus the anticipated revenues, assuming they, stay consistent with previous years, and the outflows doesn't substantiate or the need for one.
So, I mean, just like anything else, you can't borrow money if you're showing that you have money. Put it in layman's terms.
Yeah, so unless something changes, I mean, as far as the expected timing of receipts, which is possible, but at this point, not.
And as I've said before, is that the early exit, the refinancing of bonds, and the increase of taxes that hadn't been done in almost 10 years. That is what was the basis of what is happening now. That there was no, the reports from PFM were that if we did nothing, and we didn't do just nothing, we prevented that shortfall. And that's what we're seeing now, is the benefits of those actions that were taking place.
I'm talking about a $27 million swing.
Over
From
the next 5 years.
$17.5 million deficit to $11 million surplus. That's what I'm talking about. That's the miracle.
I see.
Excellent management.
Any other questions for Corey on the budget? Board of Commissioners, anything to report?
Yeah, I just want to thank Corey for all his work. I mean, we pay him well, I know that, but tomorrow's is going to be December 12th. We're going to pass a final budget, December 12th, which means we'll be able to celebrate Christmas without worrying about coming back and commiserating with the budget, which we've done many, many times in the past. And I just want to compliment you. You've taken all three of our comments and incorporated into the budget. I think if we had any questions whatsoever, you answered them. If it required research, you did that research. It just goes to show that you don't have to have somebody here every single day to manage the budget, especially in this day and age with modern communications and technology. It's just incredible. I'm an old guy here, and I find that amazing. Usually, you need face-to-face contact every day, but you don't necessarily need that anymore. And I just want to thank you.
Appreciate it. If I may.
Me too.
I appreciate you being here as well. However, I disagree with Tony. I think that we need somebody here every day. It was much easier when we had somebody down the hall. If you could come on in every day, that would be wonderful.
Short
You
commute, right?
go ahead and do that. Go ahead.
If I may comment, just, the budget wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the work of every department. I mean, I think we did a good job of working together with the commissioners, and just thank you to all the departments as well. So, it's a team effort.
Can I add something? I just want to thank Corey for all of his help through all the IRS issues too. I don't know where we would have been without that extra work you did for us. Thank you.
Guess that means we have to,
Any other business? Any audience participation? Announcements. I was asked to advise the public that the Beaver County Courthouse will be closed at 12 p.m. noon this Friday, December 13th, 2019. The courthouse employees will be conducting an emergency training. The courthouse will be closed during that training, so we ask the public not to come to the courthouse to conduct business after 12 p.m. on December 13th. That is all.
Could you put something separate in the paper?
Something small.
Yeah, no, something a little bit bigger than small. So people,
Yeah, I'm just saying that.
so
I mean,
people
we
can
ran something,
actually
we
see
did run
it.
something before, but I can ask them to run it again.
Any other announcements? All right. Will we need to reconvene after executive?
No.
All right. Motion, or adjourn and go into executive.
Go in peace.